According to usnews.com, there are about 7.6 million high school students. Of that, did you know that 55.5% play a high school sport? Why do so many people choose to play sports? Sports have many benefits, including you can become physically fit, you can improve your social skills and possibly create friendships, and you can also win scholarships for college based off how well you do in a sport. So what exactly is a sport? A sport requires skill and physical abilities that challenges you externally and internally. According to the Women's Sports Foundation, there are 3 requirements that have to be met in order for an activity to be considered a sport. The first requirement is that you have to propel a mass through space, like this volleyball. Second, you have to compete. And third, you have to have rules and regulations for that sport. So, what are the typical sports that you see every day? According to therichest.com, the typical sports include basketball, baseball, hockey, and volleyball. And from that, we all can agree that those sports meet those 3 requirements. And based off of that, why do people not think that cheerleading is a sport? Cheerleading meets all 3 requirements. And now I'm not talking about like sideline cheerleading where they just stand on the sidelines of football player and cheer on the football game. I'm talking about the more evolved cheerleading, such as competitive, all-star, professional, and college cheerleading should be considered a sport. And MHSAA, which is the Corporation of Competitive Cheerleading, they consider that competitive cheerleading as a sport, but people in my school and people that I've talked to don't agree with them, and I want to prove that competitive cheerleading is a sport. The first is that cheerleaders train just as hard as any other sport. I personally have been in cheerleading for 10 years, so I know this firsthand. And I go into practice, sweat my butt off, and I practice just as hard as any volleyball player, any basketball player. And according to CoachUp.com, there is a coach named Yolanda, and she describes 2 different events or skills that cheerleaders use. That's stunting and tumbling. And for stunting, this proves that the first requirement of a sport, you have to propel a mass through space. And cheerleaders do this in a different way. We don't use this volleyball that weighs about 2 to 6 pounds or whatever it weighs. For cheerleaders, we throw human beings that weigh an average of 125 pounds up into the air and catch them so they don't fall. And I think that cheerleaders have definitely proved that this requirement is met. Also, we body condition, we do a whole bunch of stuff that trains our body so that we can be able to participate in our sport. We go to camps and clinics to help with those, and some of those include varsity camp, which I go to every year, and then there's also Northern American Spirit and just a lot of different sports or clinics. So why do people, So the second requirement is that you have to compete in competitive cheerleading, hence competitive, we compete. We compete externally, which means that we compete with schools around our district, and then we have to have a certain amount of competitions to enter the final districts, and once we get that, we enter districts. You can win first, second, and third. You go on to regionals and then states. So competitive cheerleading definitely fits number 2, hence the competitive part again. And the third requirement is that you have to have rules and regulations. So let me tell you this, we definitely have rules and we definitely have regulations for safety purposes, because I have went into practice and my coach says, oh, well, come up with a new stunt or a new tumbling pass. And I did, and it was pretty cool, but I couldn't use that because there was rules and regulations that limited what you're supposed to do. So I tried to do a certain skill and it interfered with what the rules said, so we couldn't put it in. And that also makes cheerleading frustrating because you have all these rules, and I feel like cheerleading definitely has more rules than basketball does because we have more catastrophic injuries. In cheerleading, I myself have had a catastrophic, not really a catastrophic injury, but a knee injury, and I tore my ACL because I came down from a stunt wrong, and I never got surgery on it. So then I practiced for 4 years on it, and then I just had surgery this year. So I myself have personally witnessed and felt cheerleading and how it can hurt you and injure you. This video is how I re-injured my knee by doing an aerial, and gives an example of why cheerleading has rules and regulations. These safety precautions are just for your safety. And MHSAA and also the AACA has these requirements so that you don't hurt yourself. So based off of that, why would someone say that cheerleading isn't a sport? Most people think of cheerleading as the football and the football cheerleaders who stand on the side and go rah, 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 like I said before. But cheerleading has definitely evolved and become a more complex sport. They also base it off stereotypes and think that girls don't do anything at practice, but we condition, we compete, we do everything that any other sport would do. And so based off that, I'm not asking you to necessarily accept that football cheerleading is a sport, because I don't think it is either. But competitive cheerleading, along with those other sports that I said, like college and professional cheerleading, those definitely should be considered a sport. And I hope that you guys look at the bigger picture and notice that activities do evolve into sports, and cheerleading is just one of those.